Be seated, please. Please be seated.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I heard y'all were having donuts and Starbucks coffee. Well, good. I'm glad. It's a better way to get started on the morning than some of the sitting around and waiting we've had to be doing. And believe it or not, for us too, it's very stressful to know that you're just sitting and waiting and in those packed jury rooms, and to be able to get into what we're comfortable and used to doing, which is the jury selection process, is helpful to us. And to know that y'all were getting donuts and coffee made us smile. So, Mr. Evans.
Thank you, Judge. Sounds like a very pleasant start to the morning for you all. Let's get right into it. I'm now with juror number 14, and I'm going to ask you some questions. You can have a seat. I'm going to just move this aside. It's okay. I'll shake your hand. That's all right. More than anything, I want to be able to see you. Sometimes those chairs are a little bit low, so I'm just going to move that tissue box. Okay, juror number 14, and you know I'm just going to refer to you by juror numbers. Is that okay?
Car accident in my back and my neck, and then a problem with
Okay. And when was that car accident?
a couple of years ago.
Okay. And are you fully disabled then, full-time disability? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have continued medical complications because of that?
Yes.
Okay. Is it difficult for you to sit for long periods of time?
I sit fine.
Okay. All right. No discomfort or any pain that we need to worry about if you were...
Nothing to worry about.
Okay, very good. I have down here that you have somebody that you know that's in law enforcement. That was one of the questions that we asked about. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
My cousin, Owen Douglas, he's a judge and a lawyer. He resigned.
Okay, so judge and lawyer, is that local?
Yeah, he's lived here in Brunswick, Georgia.
And is he still a practicing judge, or?
Every now and then, like somebody asking him to come, we supposed he'll come.
Okay. We have different kinds of judges, as you may know from your personal experience. We have, for example, you have probate judges, you have magistrate judges. Judge Staley happens to be
a probate judge.
Probate. That was what I was going to ask. Judge Staley's a superior court judge, and I just wanted to distinguish which one we were talking about. Okay. I also have down here that you gave a response about knowing some people in the military. Is that accurate?
That's right.
Can you tell me a little bit about that?
My cousin, he was in the military army.
Is this the same?
It's a different
What branch of the service?
Army.
Still in the military, or is that?
He's out.
You know what he did in the Army?
He was a sergeant, lieutenant, or whatever they said it means.
I'll say that
He
like.
was a sergeant and he was a lieutenant.
Okay. And does that cousin also live locally in Glenn County?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Have you been a lifelong resident of Glenn?
Yes, sir.
There was a series of questions that was asked about basically social media and electronics. You remember we went through that whole list Mr. Boring did about Twitter and Instagram and things like that. If my notes are accurate, I have down there that you are familiar with Twitter, but other than that, you don't do a whole lot on social media.
No, I don't.
Okay, can you explain in your own words, what's your familiarity with Twitter versus all the other social media?
The reason why I'm on Twitter because I'm trying to get something going for myself, like a rock star, like entertainment. I like to sing, I play instruments.
Okay. How long you been doing music?
All my life.
Okay. What type?
I play electric guitar, beat set drums, and I like, casual sign, not too much in no rapper.
Well, if you need a harmonica player, you let me know, okay? Okay, well, very good. So you've been doing that for
All my life.
all your life, okay. And so you're on Twitter just to kind of get yourself out there so people that
Trying
can...
to use, try to find the right agent to produce the app.
Okay, great. Well, good for you. I've got a family full of musicians. My sister teaches music, so she... Okay, but other than that, you don't have too much, you're not on Facebook or anything like that?
No, sir.
What about familiarity with your like cell phone and stuff? You do any messaging, like text message or anything like that?
No, like, if I'm in a relationship with somebody,
Mhm.
like off and on, like that.
Gotcha. All right. There was a question that was posed about having ever given a statement to law enforcement. Do you remember that? And I think that you responded by raising your hand saying, yeah, you've given a statement to law enforcement in the past.
Yes, I did.
Can you tell me a little bit about that situation?
I was trying to corrupt something and I wasn't guilty of. So, this person, when they was going on a highway, and I was in the car with my grandson, they were going fast. He was trying to make it to the bank before it closed, and caught one in the dick. And one story lead to another one.
All right. Let me see if I follow that. So you were in a car,
That's right.
and y'all were going to a bank.
No, I wasn't going to the bank.
Mhm.
I was on my way going home, and the lady was coming from McIntosh County, and she was trying to make it to a bank, before it closed.
Oh, I see.
And then when, because like the turning lane,
Mhm.
I had a right of way, and she, like when you get in that turning lane, you're supposed to yield and stop. She didn't, and when she struck on the passenger side, the back fender, that's when my car, swung around and went in the ditch.
Is this the accident that you were telling us about that led to the disability, or is this a different accident?
This is a different one. I've been about 10 accidents.
Okay, you've been in a few, huh? All right, so let's talk about this incident first and make circle back and talk about the other one. This one that you're talking about, the driver that struck you, you gave a statement to the police because of the accident report and
I gave a statement because the accident report, they didn't, explain the situation, how it really happened, another way from a different view of my, situation.
I see. All right. When was this in relation to the other accident that led to the disability? Was it before or after? Or is this something more recent?
I can say it was recent.
Recent? Okay. About how long ago?
About maybe 5, 6 years.
Okay. One of the questions that we asked you was about transporting a child, and you indicated that do you currently transport a child, or is that just something you've done in the past?
Like my grandkids, like I put in a car, strap them in the seat, car seat.
How old are your grandkids?
Well, my grandkid now, one girl 16, and another girl, she's 13, and a boy, he's 18.
All right, so all teenagers, they don't need car seats or anything like that.
And,
Back when they were younger, I assume when you transported them, did you use a car seat and then eventually a booster?
yes.
All right. There was a question we asked about knowing anyone, including yourself, whether you know anyone that's ever been arrested before or anything like that. Did you raise your hand for that question?
I don't know my idea.
Okay, do you know anyone that's ever been arrested before?
I did.
You did? Okay, can you tell me a little bit about that?
Me and my daughter was going to see my sister who was out of town, and we supposed to went out to dinner. So then in the fight with my nephew, found out he beat up my sister, so his mama. So I beat him up.
Okay, so this is kind of like a domestic situation among family members. All right, I understand. And you got charged for
Yes,
for fighting with your nephew.
that's right.
What happened to the case?
They let it go.
When was that?
That was, I went to jail about 3 days, and I've been in jail for 3 days for that.
Okay. Is it 3 days ago?
I've been on time 3 days when that happened.
When it happened? And that was my question. When did it happen?
Maybe about 4 years ago.
Okay. All right. I have down here a couple of other questions that were posed of you about fairness, and you were asked some questions about some photographs as well. I think if it's okay with you, I'd like to take those up individually with you. We're going to have a chance after this to do that. Is that okay with you? If I just cover those points at a later time? Okay, thank you. I think that's all I have at this point. What, excuse me? Yeah, you want me to do that now or not? I guess. Okay, that's fine. Well, let me cover this now then. One of the questions that we were asking people is, do you think that you know somebody that's been treated unfairly within the criminal justice system? And I think you raised your hand to that. Is that accurate? Okay, and tell me why you did raise your hand for that question. What were you thinking of?
Myself, because a certain time when I've been, in things what the law and like sometimes the police, I just stop for stop sign and stop for a traffic light. And I know I did stop at a stop sign. Sometimes some people say that, my mom used to say when you stop at a stop sign and count by the 20. I said, well, I want to count the 20, stop at the stop sign, you don't see nobody coming.
Mm-hmm. And
the police were way down before I can, take off. So he gonna tell me, if you see a police coming, you don't cross. I mean, I didn't know that at that moment, at that time. That what that was about.
Okay, so did the police car have its lights on or anything like that?
No, sir, yeah, no.
So let me make sure I'm understanding.
It was daytime.
It was daytime.
Yes.
So you stopped at a stop sign,
That's right.
and the police were they coming in a different direction?
He was coming straight.
Okay,
And
straight.
he wasn't that close to me, at the time I can make my decision to go on about my business.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's when he had pulled me over and said, if you see a police coming, you don't cross it. You got police time not to pass you. But he didn't have on that siren or anything.
All right.
And I didn't know that I was in the wrong other.
All right. So what happened after that? Were you arrested or charged with anything?
No, sir.
Did
just left, going back to business.
Okay. So he just gave you some instructions about how you're supposed to go through.
Yes.
Okay. Is there anything about that situation that would lead you to believe that you couldn't be fair in this case?
At the time, I didn't see nothing, was kind of wrong about it. That's how I just, thought about it. Like I wasn't doing anything wrong. I just stopped at the stop sign
How long ago was that?
a couple of years ago.
And is that the only situation that you were thinking about when you raised your hand about being treated unfairly within the criminal justice system? Or were there others?
There were others.
Can you tell me about them?
Like when I got me a car and I had 10 of one, I said, what? Dark, but I'm over with dark 10. And I had some lights, on my car. Like everybody like to fix up their automobile, with casual, classic. So this officer in McIntosh contact, he put me over, talk about you need to take your lights off your car.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to myself, for what, reason, and after that, he's out.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, how long ago was that? Were you charged with anything in that instance?
No, it was dark time. Was an old officer, policeman. He just, gave me that, order, to take the lights off.
I see. Okay. Anything else that you were thinking of when you were asked that question?
That's about it.
So these 2 traffic stops is basically what you were thinking about.
Yes.
All right. All right. Just 1 minute. Okay. Thank you.
Well,
Hey, good morning.
come on.
First thing I'm going to do is move this. I couldn't see you, so I didn't catch everything you said. So I may have to go over a few things again if that's okay. But I don't have a whole lot to follow up on. The first thing that I want to talk to you about is I understand that you've got a full disability following an accident, but what we didn't get was what kind of work that you did before you were disabled.
I used to do hotel work.
Okay. Here in the Golden Isles in Brunswick. Okay. How long were you in that field?
Now, it was about 2 years ago.
Two.
I worked at a maid hotel.
Okay. And is that the kind of work that you've typically done through your
Yes.
life before you were disabled?
Through my life.
Okay. All right. Then going back to the disability, so you had a car accident, and was that accident here in the Brunswick area?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you became disabled. You no longer work. We're going to be sitting in this courtroom all day for several days. So we need to know if, because of your disability, you have to take any kind of medication that
Yes,
may
sir. Yes, sir.
make you drowsy or make you unable to sit for a long period of time.
I can sit for a long time, no problem with that.
Okay. So you don't take any medications that are going to be,
I take medication.
but nothing that you think will be an issue.
No.
Okay. All right, so I caught just a little bit about what you were saying, that you had a cousin that was a probate judge but doesn't sit full-time as a judge, just sits occasionally?
He's a full-time judge. I'm talking about Warren Douglas. He was a judge and a lawyer.
Okay. Here in this area?
Yes, sir.
And was that also a cousin?
Yes, sir. On my father's side.
Okay. All right. You, Mr. Evans was asking you about you raising your hand, recalling being treated unfairly by police. And what you've shared this morning is basically 2 traffic stop situations.
Yes.
All right, and then one was a stop sign. You were apparently pulled over for a stop sign issue, but I didn't catch. I heard you say that you didn't do anything wrong, but I didn't catch what it was the officer said to you.
When I was at a stop sign, I stopped, a complete stop. The police was way further down. He wasn't close to me. The lead car, the stop sign, would go my way where I was headed. So when I had left, from the stop sign, he pulled over and said that when you see a police coming, you don't get in front of him. But he didn't have on no siren.
Okay.
So when he didn't have on no siren, I thought that I was in the right, just like anybody else would have passed by, until you get the clear to, give into the direction, going
Sure.
back to business.
When you were stopped at the stop sign, are you saying that the officer was coming towards you, and did you turn in front of the officer?
No, like, I'm in my car right here, stop sign right there.
Yeah.
Before you go out, coming straight this way, he about to right there, and I, we were way close, and nothing. By the time that I crossed, that's when, he had pulled me over. Because there was nobody on that road, on that street, that's only myself and him.
Okay.
And it wasn't in the afternoon time.
Okay.
He pulled me over and said, when you see a police officer coming, like in a direction of you,
Yeah.
that you don't supposed to get in front of a police officer. You're supposed to, let they come and past you. First it was like that. But I just didn't thought of that, but I thought I wasn't in no wrong, just going about my business.
Yeah. Well, I hadn't heard of that rule either, so there must have been some miscommunication there. But he didn't arrest you or give you a ticket?
No, sir.
All right.
He just said his words, but I
All right. And so when you raised your hand, it was to a question if you thought that you'd been treated unfairly.
Yeah, that's the first thing I raised. That's the first thing that came to my attention. I mean, I don't know why he done that. I mean, you know, I can't thank for why he did that. I just know what I know for what he has said to me.
Yeah. I mean, is it fair to say you just sort of thought you were being hassled for nothing?
Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
All right. I think that's what we were talking about when we wanted to know if there was something that you thought you'd been treated unfairly. So you answered, your answer was right to that. All right, and then, so you said then you had also had another traffic stop that involved a lights on your car or window tint, and this was in McIntosh County?
Yes, when I was taking somebody to work, and it was a dark time.
Okay.
And you know, like I like dressing up my automobile like anybody else. The tint on the window wasn't real dark, you know, because you don't supposed to put real dark tint on your windows.
Well, there is a rule about that.
I know
Okay.
that, yes. And I had like lights, you know, on my car. And you know, it's like well to the bottom, like green lights or whatever like that. And also the police officer stopped and said, we need to take those lights off because I had lights like underneath the car.
I know.
You know, like on the neon
Yeah.
lights. So
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And he didn't like them.
Yeah. Couldn't argue with the cop, know how it is.
All right. Well, did you take them off or not?
No.
Good for you. Yeah, I think those are lawful. All right, and so the reason why you shared that with us and raised your hand was just because, again, you just basically you thought you were being hassled for nothing.
Right.
Okay. All right, and those are the only two instances that you were talking about. Okay. Well, I appreciate you sharing that with us then. And I think I caught most of what you were saying about using Twitter. Apparently, you're a musician and you play a lot of different instruments.
I just play lead guitar and set of drums.
Okay, and so you
And I sing, you know, like casual song. I don't rap, not like that.
okay, and you like film yourself on your cell phone and
Like Carrie Hilson, Nicki Minaj, Chris Brown, Usher, a lot of them contact me. A lot of the producers contact me. I'm trying to make up my mind which right, you know, artist, you know, producer, you know, that will help me
you've been
in my career.
okay. You've been contacted by Usher and Nicki Minaj and those people.
Yeah, you know, like they send you a picture of them, and you know, they'll say a little something, you know, they wish you love, you know, whatever like that.
Okay, but this is all through Twitter.
Yes.
All right, and that's pretty much it as far as your social media.
That's right.
Do you maintain a Facebook page at all?
I don't like Facebook.
No. Okay. Have you ever had a Facebook page?
Yes, I did.
All right.
I like it.
I'm sensing there's a story somewhere behind that smile.
It's a
So
true
is
story.
there something that you want to tell us or you think we might need to hear about?
Nah.
No?
Nah.
Okay.
One thing might read in the glass of paper. I leave it like that.
Okay. I know when to stop. All right. You did share with us you were arrested a few years ago, and about 4 years ago, and you were arrested for battery. And you said it had to do with I think you said you beat up your nephew.
Yes, because he had beat up his mom.
Okay.
She was my sister.
Okay. And you spent about 3 days in jail, and
Yes, sir.
and then you were just let go.
Yes.
All right. So what I want to know is, when they let you go, did they tell you you'd have to come back for a court date, or that there were going to be criminal charges or anything like that?
No, sir.
Did you have to hire a lawyer?
No, sir.
No.
No lawyer, nothing.
Okay. Did you ever were you ever made aware if your nephew maybe had gone to the police and said, I don't want her prosecuted?
Nothing like that. I mean, you know, the judge that let me go. I never was in no bar or trouble. This was my first time going to jail.
Okay.
I never was, you know, a bad person or nothing like that. I guess you just need to be taught a lesson.
Yeah, you were taking up for your sister,
That's right.
and apparently you got the best of it.
That's right.
You sure did. Okay. And then after you spent 3 days in jail, did you actually get to see a magistrate judge or somebody, and you told them what happened, and they just said,
Judge, I told him what happened, and he looked at my file and said, you know, I never been in trouble in my first time.
Right.
Been in jail. So he let everything go, he dropped everything.
okay, okay. I think that's very clear. Thank you.
You're welcome.
You ready?
Yes, ma'am.
You can proceed.
All right. Juror number 15 for us. I want to ask you, just as we did with the other jurors, some follow-up. You own your own landscaping firm, is that correct?
Yes,
How long have you owned that firm? When did you create it yourself, or?
I did.
Okay.
Beginning of 2010, so almost 6 years.
And what sort of background did you have before that led you to this business?
I worked at the Sea Island Company for 10 years doing landscape construction.
Great. And do you do, is it, I assume, commercial or residential, combination of both?
Combination, mostly residential.
And I'm guessing you get a lot of work around here for doing residential.
A little bit.
Okay.
Not a lot.
Is it primarily here in the Brunswick area, or do you do stuff all over the state of Georgia?
But, no, primarily in Glenn County.
Great. And how many employees do you have?
2 currently. Just me and two employees.
All right. That kind of transitions into my next question. We were asked, generally speaking, Mr. Boren asked you if you manage people, if you hire, fire people, because you own your own company. You obviously raised your hand for that. Is that correct?
Yes.
Did you have any management experience prior to starting up your own landscaping firm?
Yes, sir, with my previous
Okay.
employer.
And how long were you a supervisor or manager over there?
Basically the entire time I was there.
How long was that?
10 years.
Okay, great.
I believe it's 10 years.
And what is it that led you to say, hey, I'm going to start my own business. I'm going to leave Sea Island and do something on my own?
They had, it was during some financial troubles that they had, and I was laid off.
Okay. Okay, great. Now, are you from this area?
I'm originally from Macon.
Macon, Georgia. All right. And what brought you down here to go in? The job? Okay. I also have down here that your wife, she basically works at home. Is that correct?
She's a home.
And she's she does homeschool for your kids?
No, our kids are in school. She works 1 day a week at their school.
I got you. Sometimes we write our notes so quickly and we try to figure out, I wrote kids/school and I was trying to figure out what that meant. So 1 day a week she goes and works at your children's school.
Yes.
How old are your kids?
6 and 8.
And what does she do at the school?
Administrative work. Front desk.
Got you. Who is it that you know in law enforcement that prompted you to raise your hand for that question?
I have 2 brothers that are law enforcement.
Locally?
No, in Bibb County, Jones County.
You also indicated that you knew somebody that had some military experience.
My grandfathers were in the military. I have friends, acquaintances that have military background.
What branch of the service were your grandfathers in?
I believe both in the Army.
And what about your friends? What?
Closest friend, I've got several friends that have military background. I've got a friend that's been Marine.
Okay. There was a question that was asked about knowing anyone that had any medical training, or if you've had any medical training. I think you raised your hand for that question.
Yes, I have it. My mom is an RN.
Is she local or is she in Bibb?
She's in Bibb.
Is she still working as a nurse?
She is.
Hospital or elsewhere?
She worked most of her career in the hospital in the, I guess the maternity, she took care of the moms after they had babies. And now I think she's in kind of an outpatient care.
Do you know if she's ever worked like in pediatrics or done anything with children?
Just a little bit with, I mean, she mostly took care of moms that just had babies.
Right.
Not the pediatric side of it.
One of the questions we asked was about being a member or affiliated or regular going to church, and I think you indicated that you do. Is that correct?
I do.
Where do you attend?
Rhema Community Church.
Say that again?
Rhema Community Church.
There was a question about being involved with any fraternal type organizations or a member of any of those, which would include, you know, Rotary, Kiwanis, those types of things. And I think you raised your hand for that question.
I did. I'm not involved in any of those. He mentioned NRA, which I'm in NRA.
Okay.
member, so.
Yeah, it was a pretty broad question.
Yeah,
It would,
it's kind of broad, so.
in fact, I think most of us would probably raise our hand for a question like that, but that explains that. When it comes to social media, there's a whole list of questions that we have there. Am I correct that you do some messaging? Is that text messaging?
Yes.
Okay. And then some Craigslist as well, but then I excluded you from all the other ones. It didn't sound like you had any familiarity with that. Is that accurate? Or
No, I mean, I have some with Facebook and Instagram with my business and
Okay.
a little bit personal, but I try to promote a little bit.
you got to do that these days, especially if you're a business owner, right? Okay, so but you do have a personal and a business. So,
I do.
and what about the messaging? What is that? Is that done through Facebook and Instagram, or are we also talking about text?
Mostly just text. Not a lot of messaging through those.
All right, tell me about Craigslist.
Just occasionally selling. My hobbies are working on old cars, so occasionally I'm selling or buying car parts on Craigslist.
Okay. There was a question asked about whether you've ever volunteered with kids before, and you indicated that you had. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Can you tell me a little bit about that?
I'm involved with a ministry that ministers to single mothers, but I'm involved in the child care of those women's children.
How often are you working with that group?
Twice a month.
Okay, so the ministry is dealing with the single mothers, but then you volunteer to kind of help out with the kids. Is that while the ministry's going on? Okay. Sounds like a pretty rewarding experience. How long have you been doing that?
I just started last November or December.
You enjoying it?
I do.
Okay. And is that through your church?
It is through another local church in town.
All right. There's a response you gave that I want to follow up on involving giving a statement to law enforcement. Tell me about that.
I had a former employee that took a vehicle without permission, and so I called law enforcement.
Okay. Basically, a theft by conversion is what we call it. You had access to the vehicle but didn't bring it back? Okay. And is this part of your new business, or is this from the Sea Island experience?
My business.
Your business.
Yes.
And what happened when you made that statement? Was the person arrested?
No, he was not arrested. Ultimately, he brought the vehicle back. The officer got in touch with him and he brought it back.
So no criminal ramifications for it then?
It was not.
Well, what about on the business side of things? You have to let that employee go?
I did.
Is that the only instance where you give it a statement to law enforcement that you recall?
That I recall.
There was a couple of questions dealing with children. One of them dealt with the sudden death of a child.
Yes.
And we're not trying to pry or anything like that, but if you don't mind discussing it, then I'd like to follow up on that. If you prefer, we can do it in a more private setting.
No, I can discuss it. My wife and I have had 3 children prematurely.
Okay.
That were stillborn.
I'm sorry to hear that. I know that's difficult to deal with. Okay. Is there anything about that experience that would lead you to believe that you could not be fair and impartial in this particular case?
I didn't answer the question, but the more I've thought about it, that may play into it, just because I know like I can't watch TV shows that depict anything with children dealing with medical issues or injury or whatever, anything like that. I tend to believe that environment.
Gotcha. Let me follow up on that in a more individual context, then, if we could. I do want to ask you about transporting children. I think I have a good understanding of that. You've got kids that are young enough that they're obviously not driving themselves at this point, so I assume you and your wife transport your kids regularly. Do you have car seats and boosters and things like that you keep in your car?
Yes.
And one of the defense questions they asked you is about children sleeping in the car. Were you referring to your own children when you raised your hand for that question?
Yes.
Do all of them sleep in the car, or?
They have at times, yes.
All right. So in addition to the question we just talked about that I said I want to talk to you in an individual context, I think you raised your hand about media as well. Is that accurate? Did you raise your hand for that question of have you heard anything about the case in the media?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to follow up with that individually with you as well. Thank you, sir.
Hey, good morning. Yeah, I think several of these things we'll talk to you in private, but let me just touch on one or two things that Mr. Evans asked you about as well. All right, so you have two brothers who were in law enforcement, you said, one in Jones County and one in Bibb County. What do they do?
They're deputy sheriffs.
Okay. Are these older brothers or younger brothers?
Younger brothers.
Are you close with them such that y'all communicate daily or weekly?
Say weekly.
Okay. And do they know that you have been chosen to be questioned to be a juror in this case?
I have not spoken to them about that.
Okay. Obviously, they're not too far away from here, so I assume that you have an opportunity to actually see them or get together, certainly holidays or throughout the year,
Yes.
ball games or whatever?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do they talk shop with you about what they do in their careers?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And they are post-certified and have been to some sort of academy and
Yes, sir.
arrest powers and whatnot?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you know if either of them work in investigations?
I think so.
Okay.
I'm not entirely certain, but I believe they do.
All right, because oftentimes the sheriff has a lot of responsibilities. They serve warrants and subpoenas, protective orders. They do courthouse security, but sometimes they do lots of other things like actual traffic enforcement or investigations, or more we think of maybe as police work.
Yes.
So have they shared with you any of that kind of part of their job?
They are more on the police work.
More in the police work?
Yes.
Okay. Oftentimes, the sheriff's office have deputies trained to do what we call forensic type work or crime scene type work. Do you know if either of your brothers do that sort of work?
I don't know. Can't answer that.
Okay. Like, fingerprints or,
I don't know.
okay.
Honestly.
All right. But you think probably some type of investigations though?
I believe so.
Okay. I think that I think that it would be fair to ask you if you think that because of your brother's work and your relationship with them, if it might put any sort of undue pressure on you to lean or favor to the state side?
Honestly, I don't believe that.
Don't think so.
No, I don't think so.
Okay. You don't think they'd give you a hard time if maybe you didn't come back with a verdict that
No.
they thought was appropriate?
No.
Okay. All right, and finally, I want to ask you a little bit about your business. I caught that you had been with the Sea Island Company for 10 years, and you'd moved here to work for that company.
Yes, sir.
What I didn't get was how long you've been on your own now.
Almost 6 years.
6 years. Okay. And at this time, you have 2 employees. Has there been a time when you have had a bigger crew?
Typically, I have 3 employees, and just currently I have 2.
All right.
I have one crew and me. So-
Okay. So, what's the name of your company?
Nature's Design Landscape Development.
Nature's Design Landscape Development?
Yes, sir.
Not that anybody's listening to what we're doing, but I mean, it's free advertising for you, so if you want to tell us a little bit about what y'all do, I'd be glad to hear about it.
Landscape construction mostly.
Okay.
We design and build landscapes.
All right. Not the maintenance side.
We do a little bit of maintenance, but mostly the construction side.
Okay. One of the questions that I had asked was about purchase of car seats, and you'd indicated that y'all had done research before purchasing car seats.
Yes.
Yeah, and I'm assuming you've got 2 seats, or you've had 2 seats at one time. You had 2 car seats.
Yes.
How did you go about doing research for that?
Honestly, my wife probably did most of it.
Okay.
Probably online research.
You just are aware that she did that?
Yes.
Okay. And was that for safety purposes, because she wanted the safest?
Yes.
All right, you answered a question that that you had, you know of someone in your family or a friend or a coworker who'd had an affair. Who was that person you were talking about? Or is that something you can share with us?
Actually, my in-laws. My in-laws, my wife's parents.
Wife's parents? Okay. One or both of them is who you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay. And was that at a time while y'all were married?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And has your wife continued to maintain a relationship with both of her parents?
She has.
Okay. Maybe a little more strained?
Yes, sir.
Okay. But she still loves them?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. All right, Juror 16, how you doing? Okay, good. I've got several topics that we need to follow up on. I see at least a couple of these that we'll handle individually, but let's cover some of the things that we can right now. I have down here that your employment is in customer service. Is that accurate?
Okay. Can you tell me who are you employed by?
That's where I can say.
Okay. That's no problem. We can talk about that privately. Can you tell me a little bit about the nature of your customer service work? In other words, you can be in customer service and you can have personal interaction like we're talking now. Obviously, you can do it by phone. Just explain a little bit in your own words what type of customer service work you do.
We sell products, different products, and I answer the phone for that.
Okay. And then your husband, I wrote down a chemical operator. Is that correct? You have to say a yes or no if you don't mind, because our court reporter is going to take it down. Thank you. Tell me who it is that you know that works in the court system. You raised your hand for that question.
Well, my mom used to be a court clerk.
Here in Glen or elsewhere? You said used to be. Is she now retired, or is that a yes? And how long did she work in the clerk's office?
Just for a little while. It was kind of like volunteer work.
All right. We have different clerk's office depending on what court system you work in, magistrate, superior, state court. Do you know which clerk's office she worked for?
Traffic court.
Traffic court. All right. There was a question posed about having any management experience, and you indicated that you had some management experience. Can you tell me about that?
Different places that I work.
Can you speak up a little bit for me?
Different places that I work.
Such as what?
Like restaurants and I work for a business, a car business, and I was a supervisor there.
What kind of car? Like car sales or rental?
It was a car detailing.
Car detailer. All right. Who do you know that's got military experience?
My father was in the Marines, and my grandfather, uncle, just a lot of different people in my family.
So all family members that you were referring to. And what about medical training and medical experience? You raised your hand for that question as well. Can you tell me about that?
My sister is a surgical tech. I have a line as a nurse.
I didn't catch that last part. Aunt. And she local as well? What about your sister? Is she local? Where are they?
My sister is in Florida. And my aunt, she's in Alabama.
Do either of them work in pediatrics?
My aunt used to work in pediatrics.
There was a question posed about anyone having any psychology or psychiatry background. I think you raised your hand for that question too. Can you tell me about that?
I have something
Is it a major, or where'd you go to school?
right here in town.
Have you ever done anything in psychiatry or psychology with that degree?
Not with my degree, but like volunteer work and stuff like that.
Tell me about that.
I work with people with special needs, work with children, work with elders.
Do you presently do that, or is it just something you've done in the past?
That's just something that I sometimes volunteer work.
There was a series of questions delving into people's interactions or family interactions with like DFACs and child custody type issues. You raised your hand to at least one of those questions. Can you tell me about that situation?
I read family members that dealt with defect situations,
Which family members?
sisters,
Okay. Any of those situations deal with any, you know, issues about abuse or neglect or anything like that?
What do you mean by abuse or neglect?
Well, how did they become involved?
It wasn't abuse or, well, one situation was abuse.
Can you tell me about that?
I dealt with one of my nieces having shaken baby syndrome.
Hmm. Was anyone charged?
No.
How long ago was that?
I was actually 17 years ago for that one.
Was that here in Glen? There was a question posed about knowing anyone that works in kind of the IT field, information technology, that kind of thing, and I think you raised your hand for that question as well. Can you tell me about that?
My cousin,
What's your cousin do?
he worked, he fixed computers and he sold computers, and he just do all kind of things with computers.
Does he have a degree in that?
I don't know.
Okay. The next topic that we talked about that you had a response to dealt with social media and technology, messaging, and those types of things. And it sounds like you're pretty involved with that type of stuff, or at least have been in the past. Is that a fair assessment? Can you tell me a little bit about that?
I used to go on Twitter, but that was just like psychology. I'm on Facebook all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Message on Facebook, and text messaging.
Some people are more technologically savvy than others. They have more, you know, I don't deal with it too terribly much, but I've got family members that are more involved in it than I am. Tell me how you're familiar with Kik, for example.
Well, I see my kids.
Okay, so your children are on Kik.
Well, my son and my nieces and nephews, I see them looking at. I really don't know anything about it.
Do you have a Kik account?
Not that I know of.
Okay. There's a question that was asked about docudramas and dealing with the criminal justice system. I think you indicated that you've watched at least one docudrama. Can you tell me about that?
Well, the only thing I don't like dealing with anything like that is the heat of the night. I barely watched it.
They got the old version, they got the new version. Which one did you keep up with?
The old version.
All right. And you talked about being a caretaker. Can you tell me about your response to that question?
Can't take them like what?
Yeah, so the question was really broad. It says, does anyone here act as a caretaker to adults or children or anything like that? And I think you raised your hand. You were one of several jurors that raised your hand for that.
Yes, I do. I have a son. I take care of him.
Okay.
I take care of my husband. I take care of nieces and nephews.
How old's your son?
16.
All right. One of the topics we delved into on general questioning look to see about whether you've had any experiences with law enforcement. I think you indicated that you had a negative experience with law enforcement in the past. Can you tell me about that?
I was falsely arrested over some hearsay.
What do you mean by that?
I got arrested for, I guess it was supposed to be aggravated battery, but it wasn't, because I never did anything.
Who charged you? Like, who was the person that claimed that you did this?
My sister,
Okay. And what happened to the case?
they got corona.
Is that the only thing you were referring to when you talked about negative experience with law enforcement? All right. There's a kind of a very similar question that asked about your opinion about the criminal justice system and whether you knew anyone that you thought was treated unfairly within the criminal justice system. Remember, you raised your hand for that question. If you could, tell me what you were thinking about that prompted you to raise your hand there. The one we just referred about, the aggravated battery? Was there anything else that was on your mind when you raised your hand for that question? I'm sorry? Okay. One of the other broad questions we asked is if you know anyone that's been arrested. You've already told me about yourself. Is there other people that you know that have been arrested as well that prompted you to raise your hand for that question? Who? I'm having a hard time hearing you. Can you speak up just a little bit for me? Okay. What's the most serious charge for any of those family members or friends? Tell me about giving a statement to the law enforcement in the past. Okay, 20 years ago. Tell me about it. Okay. Is this different than what happened 17 years ago with the shaken baby? Is the same sister or different sister? But you recall talking to DFACS and police back in that instance? Well, I'm talking about the one that we're talking about now, the 20 years ago.
I recall a little bit talking to the police, but really not that much. It was a while.
All right. What about the one 17 years ago? Did you talk to the police then? One of the questions that was asked is if you know anyone that's ever been investigated for child abuse or neglect. You've already mentioned a couple of instances. Is there anything else that prompted you to raise your hand for that question outside of what we've already discussed?
No, just that one yesterday.
And what about the sudden death of a child? You raised your hand having had experience with that.
Yes.
What were you referring to?
Just a friend that had lost a child.
How close were you to the friend?
Very close.
How old was the child?
The child was 23 months old.
How long ago was this?
That was actually over 20 years ago.
What were the circumstances of the loss of that 23-month-old?
The child had gotten some medicine.
Okay. So it was an unfortunate overdose situation, my understanding? Any charges or anything involved in that? Okay. You talked about having transported children. I know obviously you had your son. When he was younger, you would have to transport him. He's now old enough to drive, correct? Okay. Any other one that you refer, any other people you referring to when it comes to transporting children?
Well, I transported all my nieces and nephews, a lot of them. But not lately, because most of them are grown.
Okay. There was a question that the defense asked about experiencing any sudden tragedies in your life, and I think you raised your hand had a response to that question. Is that correct?
Yes.
Can you tell me about that?
Well, I watch a lot of people in my neighborhood getting killed, like right in front of me, things like that.
All right. I've got several other questions that I think we're going to do individually for you. Thank you. Hey, good morning. You are extremely soft-spoken this morning, so I might have to ask you some of the same questions again. I just simply could not hear most of what you said. Are you a little bit nervous this morning?
No, I'm just really sick.
Oh, okay. Well, now that I'm a little closer and can hear you, you've got some congestion. Okay. All right. Did you take any cough medicine or anything this morning? Okay. If we can get through this in about 15 minutes, you gonna be okay? All right. Do you need a tissue? All right. All right. Well, there's never a good time to get sick, but obviously this was particularly not a good time for you, so I'm sorry. Several things that I do want to go back over with you. First thing is you had indicated to us and spoke this morning briefly about this experience where you were arrested for, you indicated ag battery, and your sister made false allegation against you. How long ago was this?
13 years.
Okay. Do you remember, was that here in the Glenn County area? Okay. And just so we'll kind of understand what went down, did like an officer come out to the house and talk to both of you?
No.
How did it go down that you ended up getting arrested?
My sister was basically mad because I wouldn't let her in my house. Because, just like I said before, I had sisters that deal with defect situations, and she was being slack with her kids, but I wouldn't let her get her kids out my house. So she called police.
Okay.
That was basically it. And she was in the middle of taking out her hair, so she made the police think that I snatched her hair out, and that was basically it about that.
All right. And did she call from your house while she was there at the house, like call on the cell phone, or did she call from her house?
She called from the phone booth.
From a phone booth. And then so they come and they show up at your house.
And I didn't open the door for her.
Okay. They were banging on the door. Did they tell you why they were there?
No, they were just knocking on the door, and I was ignoring.
Okay. Did you know why they were there?
Yeah.
All right. You suspected that she probably had called because y'all had this brouhaha go down?
Because she was yelling through my door. So, yeah, I knew exactly why they were there.
Okay. And so she had been taking down her hair, but you think she told them, that being the police, that you had pulled her hair out?
Yeah, because I read in the description what it was about.
Okay. All right. Did the police have to break down the door?
No,
All right. Eventually you just opened the door?
no, they came back a couple of days later.
Okay.
And
All right.
that's when I was arrested.
All right. Did you try to tell them what had happened?
No,
You just went with them?
I just dealt with it
Okay.
because I knew I wasn't really in trouble about anything, so I just dealt with it.
All right. So if they took you to jail, did you have to bond out?
Yeah.
All right. Did you end up having to get a lawyer?
No.
No. Did you have to go to court?
Mm-hmm.
What happened when you went to court?
It was drawn out. When I explained it to the judge, it was drawn out.
Okay. And was she there during this hearing with the judge?
You know,
Was the officer there?
I can't remember. Maybe he was. It may have been.
You think so? It sounds to me like it may have been sort of like a preliminary hearing or something where the officer was telling the judge the information he had, and then you told the judge the truth, and the judge just tossed it out at that point.
That's exactly what happened. I mean, it's been so long, so I can't remember exactly what happened that day. I just know it was dismissed.
Okay. All right. And you've, I mean, apparently you've got a big family because you've mentioned nieces and sisters and all this. How many sisters do you have?
Three sisters.
3 sisters. All right. And I know that one of the sisters you've told us 17 years ago there was a what you termed a shaken baby syndrome. All right, so that's one of your sisters. And what happened?
Well, someone she let keep her child shut the child. So I mean it's still a mystery.
Okay.
So I don't know.
All right, is your niece okay?
Yeah, she okay now.
All right. Did your sister end up getting arrested for that?
No. They just took the child away.
Okay.
But she never was arrested for it.
All right. And that child, did that child ever come to live with you?
No, not at that time.
Okay. Eventually she got her child back?
Yeah.
All right. And then you told us about 20 years ago that DFACS took another of your sister's child away. But that was a different sister.
Yeah.
And I did not catch what the circumstances were that required DFACS intervention.
It was just a babysitter that my sister left her kids with, called the police like soon as she left. So
Okay. Just to
it was just a crazy situation because she left her kids with these 2 girls, and as soon as she left, they called the police and said she left her kids home. So that was the situation with that.
all right. So you've had some involvement with the department, with DFACS, through your family.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, not real involvement, but yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess the question is, did you find these experiences over the years dealing with DFACS, did you find those to be positive experiences or problematic? Negative experiences?
It's been okay.
Okay.
You know, when you have people taking away your family, you don't feel like really happy about that. But it's been, I didn't have any negative experience with them.
Okay.
They did their job.
Okay. All right. Other than the one situation 13 years ago, was there another experience with, not DFACS, but with law enforcement, police? Were there any other bad experiences or any other experiences that you think you need to call to our attention? Not even resulting in an arrest. I'm talking about just any experience that sticks out in your mind that you think you should call to our attention.
No.
Okay. All right. You indicated that though you had seen people in your neighborhood killed. All right. Can you Can you flesh that out a little bit? Have you been a witness to a homicide, or has there just been some violence in your neighborhood, and you just happen to live in that neighborhood?
I mean, I witnessed a homicide, but not being a witness, but I witnessed it.
Okay. And how so?
I seen someone, it was like a husband blowing his wife's brains out and blowing his brains out. Right in the middle of the day.
Was this something that happened just in public, and you were there, like at a store and just on the street?
No, they actually stayed right behind me, and I was actually a kid when that happened. It happened about 20 years ago.
Okay.
And they had a lot of kids, so basically I was one of the older kids in the neighborhood that dealt with their family real close, and I just helped try to comfort the children, because she got like 6 children, so that was basically how I dealt with it real close.
Okay. Did you end up making a statement to police? I mean, obviously the police came. Did you have to talk to them about what had happened?
No, because I mean, everybody seen what happened. Like, the police was there watching some of it happen as well.
Okay. The police had already been called. Apparently they were in a knockdown, drag out or something, and the police had been called, and
Yeah.
then it was a murder-suicide.
Mhm.
All right. All right. You mentioned that also about 20 years ago, you had a close friend that lost a child. Are you still friends with that lady?
Yeah.
You are still friends with her? And you indicated that the child had gotten into some medicine. Was this something that happened there in the home?
Yeah.
Okay. And was that also in Glenn County? Okay. And the child got into something, apparently ate some medicine and passed. All right. And your friend wasn't charged with anything?
Not that I know of.
Okay. All right. All right, one of the questions that I asked, you answered that you had, you were familiar with public service announcements such as the governor's office Look Again campaign, or any kind of public service announcement reminding parents to double check their car for children. Do you remember what public service announcement you heard, or when you heard that?
Commercials flashing on the television, basically.
Okay. Commercials? Okay. Okay. You answered that you, either yourself or your spouse had to hire an attorney. What was that for?
For a car accident, lawsuit.
Car accident case?
Yeah.
Okay. Is that something recent?
Not that recent. Just a few years back. I think it's in the bathroom break.
She's not feeling well, Judge.
Let's all take a break for about 2 minutes.
All right.